Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today during our Creator Studio weekly webinar series. My name is Dre. I'm a customer success engineer here at Moveworks, and I'll be your host today. I've been the host for the last couple of weeks as well. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, for anyone who's joined us before and who's here now, thanks for joining us. So before we go ahead and get into the content of this session, I want to just give a brief sort of overview of the sessions that will be coming up here in the near future. Next week, we'll be discussing ServiceNow approval reminders with Creator Studio. This is a super commonly requested functionality, and Creator Studio is really the right tool to be building these approval reminders in. So that will be next week. The following week, we're actually going to be skipping because we have our global event. As you can see in my background for my Zoom. But if you're not registered with that already, please reach out and we can help you get registered. That'll be some great content coming out on the 23rd. The week following that one, on May 1st, we'll be discussing accelerating Salesforce queries with Creator Studio. Now, this is going to be, we'll probably focus in on a particular object within Salesforce of some sort, be that accounts or opportunities, something along those lines. If you do have any particular request for Salesforce data that we might be querying, please again reach out and let us know. We have things in mind, but there's so many different possible routes to take with Salesforce queries that it'd be good to get some input from you guys. But with that, we can go ahead and get started and discuss what we'll be doing today. So with regards to today's agenda, the topic of today is the SharePoint site search and filtering with Creator Studio. We'll have a bit of an overview of how to set this up and what the user experience of this would look like. And then we'll have a follow-up Q&A session at the end of the call. So please hold any of your questions or comments until the Q&A session. Feel free to comment, of course, in the Zoom chat, and we can use those to sort of kick off our Q&A. So let's get started with the content portion of this. So what I want to do is sort of motivate the reasoning behind why you would want to use Creator Studio for SharePoint site search and filtering. So the use case that we'll be focusing in on in particular today is going to be using SharePoint lists. And this is, again, just a very common thing that a lot of our customers are utilizing for sort of a myriad of different use cases. Some common use cases that I've seen are using SharePoint lists for managing event calendars or possibly like org-wide meeting calendars. I've also seen this for cost department matrices. Really, there's many ways to leverage lists. And the SharePoint list in particular, the SharePoint list API offers some pretty nice filtering capabilities that just match very, very well with Creator Studio. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the user experience that we are going to be shooting for today. So as you can see in this purple chat diagram, this is going to be a user-initiated experience. I always try to think about, what is the type of initiation for this user experience, because this is going to help us determine which studio to leverage. So in this case, this is a user-initiated use case. So right away, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be either a paths use case or a queries use case. In this case, the user is going to initiate the conversation by asking a question that really contains all the information that should be required to get the information that they're looking for. We don't need to ask any follow-up details. We can go right away to making the query. And so with that in mind, I've kind of given it away. This will be a queries use case. Once the user has made that question, then we need to pull out the data from their utterance that is going to be leveraged in our filter. So SharePoint lists offers the filter capability that you can kind of see here in this inbound request and middleware section of the purple chat annotation. You can kind of see sort of also the way that this is set up. So you have fields priority equals critical. And this word critical is being pulled again from the user's utterance. So this is where our query criteria would go. Once we have come up with this criteria, we can then pass that to our iPass tool. The demo that you'll see in a moment is leveraging Workato for our, for this iPass tool, but really any iPass tool should work or third-party automation tool should work. Once the tool has this filter criteria, it's going to establish that connection to SharePoint lists over the Graph API. It's going to make the API call, and then it's going to return from SharePoint lists the list data that matches the filter criteria. Finally, the iPaaS tool is going to be leveraged here potentially to clean up any of the data, do any sort of string formatting, really any manipulation that's required to be done before submitting that final JSON return back to Query Studio. Once that gets back to Query Studio, if you've built with queries before, you'll know that you go through an API labeling process and can organize sort of how that data is shown to the user. And you can kind of see an example of what that looks like down here. Now with Copilot, this works a little bit differently, right? So you are still working through that API labeling process. You are still getting a JSON object that is going to, define sort of the way the response is going to be shared. But the final result, the final return, is going to be a little bit more conversational. So we'll see if we can sort of see what that might look like too. This is an architecture and sort of process diagram that I like to share during these webinars. I think it gives a good sense and sort of grounding of how the components connect to each other. And you can kind of see the organization of the process on the right side. So that first step is the user is going to come to the bot and it's going to ask that question, what are the critical customer feedback that we have access to? So again, queries is going to pull out the required information from that question. It's going to then pass that to our iPaaS solution. And the iPaaS solution is going to do a lot of this automation. So it's going to go ahead and configure the SharePoint List API call. It's going to make that API call and then optionally do any data reformatting. I've done some experiments. You actually can just go directly to SharePoint, but you still need to have this sort of workflow to get things to work properly. But once you get the data the way you want it to be returned, you then return it to Queries Workspace, which formats it and shares it back with the user. So let's go ahead and look at the demo. Today, we're actually going to share a video of this demo. We are having some minor issues this morning with our demo environment. So I want to just go ahead and share this. Now, there's no audio, so I can sort of talk through a little bit of what's going on here. Let's start right at the part where they're talking.
So I'm going to ask my Copilot, hey.
So in this case, Ajay, the person who's running this demonstration, is going to ask the bot, hey, I wanted to check back in on recent customer feedback. Are there any open critical items for us to see? So again, what's happening is the bot is going to get this utterance, and it knows based on the content of the question that this needs to trigger this use case that's been configured. Look up open product issues by priority. And you can see it's already pulling out the keyword that's important for this query to work. In this case, that's the word critical. This is trained as part of our configuration of the queries use case. And with that, bot is then able to make that call to Workato. Workato makes that call to SharePoint. SharePoint returns to Workato, returns back to queries. And again, this is sort of a Copilot version of that experience we saw earlier. It's going to summarize the return and the results within sort of a paragraph. So in this case, it's able to talk about the issue, loading delay issue with homepage, as well as sort of summarize some of the other issues that are going on. Go ahead and let that proceed. Of course, with Copilot, you have the capability to see the citations and where this data is coming from. And in this case, the citation is going to be that card that you've configured as part of your queries use case. So this is going to be all the data that's returned, all of the data that you've configured for users to be able to see. This is sort of the place where we are coming up with the data to generate the response, that retrieval augmented generative response. Of course, you still have the capability of context, and you can ask multiple questions at once. And Copilot's smart enough to be able to leverage that same use case that you've built to make multiple calls to that use case that's been built. So Ajay is asking, can you put all items that are either critical or high priority in a list for me? Really, this is two questions, right? This is, can I see all of the critical and can I see all of the high priority items in that list? So what's happening here is the bot's going to make two calls. So one is searching lookup open product issues by priority for high priority. Again, it's going to be using that filter criteria to search the list for that pre-configured value that we can search through. And then it's going to do the same thing for critical. And then it's going to give you a list of sort of the summary of both of those things. So you have loading delay issues with homepage. You also have this account login failure. Again, just sort of giving you more information. And once again, if you need to get even deeper into the details, you can either ask the bot to clarify or provide more information, and it'll present more of the data without it being a summarization. Or you can simply just click on the more details. So you'll notice at the end of both of these list items, you can find more details about this issue here. If you click that, that would give you more info, the same way that we were seeing it before. Yep, and you can see sort of here the citations that are available. All right, so that will conclude the demo. Let me go ahead and go back to our presentation. So I want to, before we jump into the Q&A portion of this call, just discuss some learning opportunities and resources that you might leverage while building your own use cases. Let's see here real quick, just make sure we're good on time. We are. Okay, so the first resource that I wanted to share is the Creator Studio Developer Certification. You can find this on our Academy, which is sort of our learning resource, our primary training resource. You have training modules, step-by-step videos, as well as the ability to get a certification that you can share on LinkedIn. So just to sort of show your capability with the platform. Additionally, we have the documentation and developer community. Our documentation portal should be your primary resource for all things Moveworks as far as reference material goes. You can think of it as sort of the dictionary of all things that Moveworks offers, including our Creator Studio use cases, tutorials on setting up those use cases, design patterns, which are sort of like high-level use cases where they're not specifically aimed toward a particular integration or a particular we'll say business use case, but it is tailored as far as sort of you can think of it as like a Mad Lib. It's kind of hard to describe. So again, please ask any questions in the comments if you want me to clarify further. Additionally, though, we have our developer community. This is our forum for interacting with other customers, as well as product managers, engineers. I myself am in community quite a bit. And this is just a really great resource for ideation and understanding how others are implementing some of their use cases or Moveworks features just generally. So I highly recommend that resource. It's a really good one. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and open this up for the Q&A portion of the call. I did kind of burn through this content. We had sort of a lot to cover in a short period of time, so I want to leave plenty of time for questions. Please, again, ask any questions in the comments. I'll unmute you, and we can talk about it a bit more. I'm also going to go ahead and launch the poll so you can provide any feedback for today's session.
I think you're muted there, sir.
Oh, shoot. Thank you very much. Well, let me start over again. Thank you very much. That's a little bit embarrassing. But if you,
Sorry I didn't catch you earlier.
no, it's okay. I kind of took off. Um, anyway, I was, so design patterns you can think of as sort of like templates, right? Use cases are going to be very specific. It's going to be how do you create this exact, um, this exact functionality. So if we look at this use case, for example, the Microsoft MFA reset use case, this is going to be leveraging a specific integration, specific workflow, specific tools for middleware, and it's going to have a sort of a specific user experience that you've set up. A design pattern, on the other hand, might be something like an ID-based action path or this custom RAG query that we were describing earlier. So for like an ID-based action path, this is not really so much saying like you are only going to be able to look up information like in a particular system. It's going to be saying that this is a path use case that is getting some ID and then returning some information. So this is going to be system agnostic. It's the right workflow for the user experience. But beyond that, there's sort of the ability to plug and play whatever integration you want to build, whatever user experience you want to build, whatever dialogue, that kind of thing. Does that help clarify, Hector?
Yeah, I guess I'm little. It kind of sounds the same, or I'm having a hard time understanding the difference between using a design pattern versus, I mean, like your Creator Studio capability with Purple Chat.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Purple Chat is going to be a tool that you can leverage within the scope of a design pattern, I guess, if that makes sense. So the design pattern, again, is really just sort of to show the types of workflows that you can leverage within Creator Studio. Purple Chat is going to come in and be much more specific. So you would be using a Purple Chat builder diagram to sort of demonstrate like this is the exact user experience we want to show. So this is sort of just an example Purple Chat diagram of an experience that would fit within the design pattern, but it is not itself the design pattern. The design pattern is the just the workflow here.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. And sorry, I forgot I was on mute a moment ago. So I was sort of talking about these example use cases, right? These are different use cases that might fit within the design pattern. So you have like this finance, add funds to a purchase order. That's what's going on here. But then you have T&E, cancel a flight booking. It's really the same kind of use case. It's the same workflow. You have the user come to the bot and say, I need to cancel my flight. You have to follow up and ask, okay, what's your flight number? You provide the flight number, makes the call. So there you go.
I see. So within a use case, you could have multiple design patterns.
Yeah, there's definitely multiple design patterns. Well, I should say different ways to do a particular use case. So an example of this one would be you could redo this as a queries use case, right? It doesn't have to be a PATS use case. And if it's a queries use case, then you're assuming the users are going to come to the bot and ask with the proper ID within that initial question. But that you're right, that would be an ID-based action query, probably. I don't know if that's documented in here or not, but we can see. Path. Customer query. No, it doesn't look like it's in here right now. And the other thing to note here is that this design pattern library is growing a lot. So right now it's a little limited, but there will be more to come.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and move to Carla. Okay, Carla. I see your question is this for connecting to only the lists in SharePoint? This is with regards to this use case. Is that correct?
I see. I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering if that was specifically the lists function.
Yes. So this, again, the demo that we shared is specific to lists, but you can actually, let me see if I still have this open. The SharePoint offers a lot of different APIs, and many of those offer this sort of same filter capability. So an example might be if you wanted to do this for like native articles within SharePoint, you could do the same type of filtering process and just leverage the metadata that's on those filters. Now, normally we would just ingest that content directly into the bot as a knowledge article or a knowledge base. But
right.
Just to sort of show that that's a capability you could do in Creator Studio is there. I'm trying to think if there's other. I mean, frankly, those are like the two big ones that I run into all the time are just knowledge content and lists. But
What about other things, maybe projects and that kind of thing that would live in SharePoint?
sure, that would also be doable. Again, let's see if we can find the SharePoint projects API documentation. Maybe it's in here. This looks like it's a question though. Yeah, it is. Okay, I would have to find the API documentation to say for sure what's doable, but I know that SharePoint offers, again, that sort of same filter capability for project data. I don't know exactly what the API call would look like in that case, but it would ultimately be the same thing. And that kind of goes back to the larger design pattern here being this, you pull out the filter criteria from the user's utterance and you pass that to the API call that you're making. That would be sort of the design pattern in this case.
So you would need to implement this because the regular article pull-in from SharePoint wouldn't include lists. Is that
That's
correct?
right. Yeah, so there is a way to ingest lists as like native content, but the thing is that when you're ingesting content that are in lists, a lot of the time the content is in a list, so it can be referenced in a bunch of other articles. Now, if that's the case, if you actually pull that knowledge article, the data is not in the article. There's like a link to the list object, and so it's really hard to get that data into the knowledge article to serve the same way. So the workaround there would be to, again, just sort of ingest the list directly as a knowledge article, which we can do some of the times. It's sort of challenging to set up because SharePoint didn't design lists with that in mind. So this particular use case tends to come around more, again, when you're talking about things like calendars, where you have perhaps a list of holidays and then regions where those holidays are applicable. You could build this use case so that way the user is coming to the bot instead of saying this, it's like, what are my holidays? And instead of pulling the query from the user's utterance in that context, maybe you are just grabbing the user's location that's been ingested as part of their user profile. And then the same thing happens. You still submit that to the SharePoint List API and you can get back holidays. That's just one example, but again, really whatever data you keep in a list, you might be able to query like this.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions currently coming up, but I also note that we have about 5 minutes left on the clock, so I'll let things sit for maybe a few more minutes before we end the session. Go ahead and share slideshow again. Okay. Alrighty. I think with that, we can, let me just make sure I didn't do this. Can you push that poll again? Yes, I can do that. Here, one moment. Okay, I think I need to end the poll, then relaunch it. So give me one moment here. Relaunch poll. All right, Hector, you'll be able to see the poll now. Okay, excellent. Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the session, but please reach out if you have any questions, especially on the community. Great resource to get in touch with myself or anyone else who might be able to answer these questions. But thank you again. Have a great afternoon or rest of the day, depending on where you are. And hopefully we'll see you next week.